Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the Senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. With me today on this week's Kibbitzing with Kagan is my good friend and wonderful council member, Gabe Albornoz. Council President Albornoz, welcome. Looking forward to kibitzing with you today.
Oh my gosh, Senator, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. You're a Montgomery County native. Talk about your background, and let's slide quickly past the fact that you're Whitman, since I'm Churchill and but why don't you talk a little bit about your childhood?
So we'll talk about Bulldogs and Vikings.
There you go.
So it's a truly an honor to be on, Senator, and I want to start from this place thanking you for your leadership in so many different areas, and your friendship and your mentorship. But yes, I am a proud lifelong Montgomery County resident. My folks immigrated here from South America with their respective families. And my Montgomery County roots run deep. My parents actually met as students at Montgomery College. So this is home. And growing up, lived in Gaithersburg, Silver Spring, and Bethesda, and married a Montgomery County girl. We now live in Kensington, 3 doors away from my mother and father-in-law. And we, of course, have 4 pretty awesome kids and are celebrating my daughter's 14th birthday this week. So a little bit of March Madness. But I graduated from Whitman, went to University of Maryland, got my MBA from Johns Hopkins, and set out on a career in public service pretty early on, working for Children's National Hospital, then the Latin American Youth Center, and then as the director of the rec department. So I got that public service bug, like you as well, and many others in our community. And I love it here. It's home.
Yeah. So for 11 years, you ran the county rec department, and you were the youngest member of former county executive Ike Leggett's cabinet. Why don't you talk about the impact that you had and the growth that you were able to lead in your 11 years?
Thank you so much. That was undoubtedly the most formidable experience of my entire professional career. I was honored to have been appointed by a guy who I think so many of us love and respect, and Ike, and whom I miss for many reasons. But Ike saw fit to turn over the keys to me to lead one of the larger departments in the county as then the youngest political appointee in the history of the county. And it was quite a journey. Within a year and a half of getting those keys, we went through the recession and had to cut our budget by cumulatively almost 38% over 2 fiscal years, had to let a lot of really awesome people go and cut back on a number of programs. But what that experience taught me was the value of partnerships, and that the county government cannot alone provide the services that all of our residents need. And so it was serendipitous to have come from the nonprofit sector and have brought those relationships into the job, because we were able to actually expand our programs and services as we were reducing the programs directly provided by the county. We brought in partners like Identity, the Maryland Multicultural Youth Centers, Gap Busters, and so many great nonprofits that helped round out the programs and services we were providing, but also to our senior community. So despite those challenges, we got a lot done. We established Excel Beyond the Bell, which is a nationally award-winning after-school model and program. We were able to build or renovate 11 recreation centers and senior centers. We added 2 senior centers while we were there. So cumulatively, the department serves over 400,000 residents each year. And that includes, of course, the large special events like the 4th of July fireworks, but it's quite an operation. And I found that recreation, some people view as nice, but not necessary. I think it's nice and critical because it not only adds to the quality of life of our residents, but in many ways, it saves lives.
Absolutely. And to be clear, these are all free of charge, so they are inclusive, and everyone of any age and any background and any language are all welcome to take advantage of our beautiful parks and recreation facilities.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So you and I first worked together when you were on the Democratic Central Committee and chaired the Democratic Central Committee. You were there for 5 years. Briefly, why are you a Democrat, and what was it like to try to wrangle cats, lead cats as the Democratic Party leader?
Yeah, I still have the scars to prove that I was chair of the Democratic Party for a couple of years. But I'm a Democrat because of the values I hold dear, social justice and making sure that we pursue the common good. That's my North Star. And I feel our party does that better than just about any other democratic organization around the world. And we have a large tent with a wide variety of views and perspectives. Just because you're a Democrat, it doesn't mean you're pro-economic development and jobs and workforce development. Just because you're a Democrat, it doesn't mean that you don't want safe streets and support law enforcement and first responders. It means all those things, but we also acknowledge that we have to bear in mind that not everybody has the same experiences. Not everyone has the same opportunities and options. And our party in particular gets that. And so we can balance those things and move us forward as a community. And the proof is in the pudding. Montgomery County has been in Democratic hands for generations at this point. And we are diverse. We are economically the engine of this state in many ways. And when you look at the Fortune 500 companies and the life sciences industries that have chosen to make Montgomery County their home, I know we often talk about what's wrong and what's broken and what's missing. We don't talk enough about what the assets are that we have here. The fact that we're the most educated community in the entire country. These aren't by accident. It's because of Democratic leadership for many years now.
Amen. Well said. So talk about your journey to deciding to run for an at-large county council seat for the first time 4 years ago.
Well, let me start this way. You played an important role in that journey, Senator Kagan. It was a conversation with you over some wings, I believe.
And a beer. Really, I'm sure it was a beer.
That's right, and a beer for sure.
Yeah.
But that really instilled some much needed confidence and a boost in trying to sort through how this all works. I have that public service bug, but making the leap to run for elected office is a significant one because it impacts not just you professionally and personally, but by extension, very much your family. And I'll tell you a quick story. I don't know if you know this story, but I participated in this program called the Presidential Leadership Scholarship.
Oh, it's on my list. We're going to get to that.
Oh, good.
Okay.
So, so I'll connect a couple of dots then, but what had been holding me back the most from running for office was how do I do this and still be a good dad and still be, a good husband? Because I've had a lot of titles, but the ones that are most important to me are dad and husband. Yeah. And in this program, it was a bipartisan program, 30 Democrats, 30 Republicans from across the country, super impressive people. I was at the bottom of the barrel, believe me.
Stop.
These were outstanding individuals and leaders across the country. And, as chair of the Democratic Party, as a longtime Democratic advocate, I had protested against George W. Bush. I had actively and rigorously campaigned against him. So what happens? They sit me at his table for our graduation. And we ended up talking for over an hour about our families, about sports, and about the politics of then. This was when Trump was really coming onto the scene politically, unfortunately. And he gave me the best advice of anyone in terms of how to balance family and policy and being an elected official. And he said three things. The first is, and I'd heard this from other people, but not quite the way he said it. He said, pretend like when you get home that all of the stress, all of the anxiety, all of the anxiousness is a coat that you are wearing, and hang it up in your closet before you walk in the door.
Nice.
And that was really cool. And the second thing he said was that you have to make sure that your spouse isn't just supporting something that you want to do or your significant other, but that they're all in, that they have some skin in the game. And Catherine and I had dinner the night before I decided to do this. And over the course of that conversation, she started talking about policy and stuff that mattered to her. And he said, Laura has always been my biggest confidant, my best friend, my most trusted advisor. And you have to have that in order to make this work. And so when I felt that with my Catherine, it just was like that last piece. And then the third thing he said was, when you are home, be present. That you really do have to put the phone away when you're playing dress ups, when you're kicking the ball around, or you got to really put it away. So those things, plus just the professional experiences I had in life, led me to do this.
That's fantastic. Well, I have to tell you that two of my questions were going to be, how do you balance work life with Catherine and the four kids? Because too often folks ask that of women and they don't
Yeah,
ask that of men. And so I find that um, problematic, actually. So
yeah.
anticipating that question, I was also going to ask about the Presidential Leadership Scholarship and who you met, what you learned. So let's just take one piece of that. What did you learn in that program that you've brought back to make you a better council member, a better leader?
Absolutely, great question. So it's three things. The first is
Okay.
relationships.
Yes.
So it's my class was just extraordinary. All the classes have been extraordinary. So you've got leaders in the public, private, nonprofit sectors and the military from across the country. And during the pandemic in particular, I leaned in and sought the advice of my friends who were public health specialists across the country
Nice.
to help validate and verify what we were doing here. Immensely helpful. I have also consulted with them on things like how to close the digital divide. A good friend of mine is at a very high level at Comcast and has been a trusted advisor in thinking through how we address those issues in our community. And it's also the classwork and instruction itself was extraordinary because we visited the libraries of both President George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, as well as Lyndon B. Johnson and Bill Clinton.
Yep.
And each, led during its own difficult challenges and times. And we learned about the leadership qualities of those individual leaders and how Bill Clinton could speak to a room full of people, but somehow make it feel like he was only talking to you, which was extraordinary. And George W. Bush brought a sense of order and precision to the White House, which on the heels of 9/11 was critically important in our response to that time.
Yeah.
And people don't give Lyndon B. Johnson the full credit he deserves in terms of the overall policy agenda that he was able to advance. And people focus too much on, and understandably so, just how terrible Vietnam was. But when you look at the social agenda that he was able to push forward, it's more significant than any other president in the last century. And so those are qualities that we learned about. And we also had the opportunity to speak to cabinet officials who were still with us and that were in the room as very difficult decisions were being made and how complicated those decisions can be.
So Gabe, council member, council president, Albornoz, I have a ton more questions and I know that we've got limited time. Let's see, first off, when you were first elected among four at-large council members, Albornoz, Glass, Jawando, and Reamer, what was your biggest surprise, being an elected official or being a council member?
Well, having worked in the executive branch for almost 12 years, you're in charge of implementation. And there are some policies and projects that you can create, make up. But I learned very quickly that the legislative process is very different because you can set the table, you can push people in the right direction, but you can't actually implement. And so that at first was a little bit of an adjustment and challenge. And I would also say that I'm fortunate to have 8 colleagues whom I have very strong relationships with, but we don't always agree on various issues. And we are all, by and large, type A personalities that really want to get stuff. I'll say stuff and not the 4-letter word that I'd like to say. But we want to get stuff done. And we're all feeling the weight of this moment and wanting to advance policies that benefit as many people as possible. But the perspective that I bring, having worked during the recession, was making sure that we do so responsibly and that there aren't unintended consequences of us, with the best of intentions, rolling out policies when we don't talk to the departments and agencies who are going to be charged with implementing them, when we are not thinking through the budget ramifications of some of these decisions and writing checks that I'm sometimes worried we may not be able to cash later. So it's a balance. And what I've also learned is that there's a very diverse set of views in our community on a myriad of different issues. We're discussing Thrive 2050 right now, which will direct housing policy for the next 30 years and growth policy in the county for the next 30 years. Wide ranges of opinion on that, passionate feelings. So creating a time and space to authentically be able to listen to people and to be able to kibitz, but also problem solve has been something I've gotten actually the most energy from, is trying to bring people together and build those bridges. Not always easy, but something I'm enjoying.
So a lot of folks are aware of NIMBYs, not in my backyard. I should tell you, in the Senate recently, there was a housing advocate who had established a group called YIMBY,
yes,
my backyard, which I loved. I thought that was awesome. So you're bilingual. Tell me how you think that's important, and can you also talk about whether and how you've experienced hate or division?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, I am so fortunate that my mom and dad had the foresight to exclusively speak to me in Spanish from a very young age. And so Spanish was actually my first language. I didn't start picking up English until I got to preschool. And what an asset that has been for so many different reasons. Just this morning alone, I had the good fortune of having the opportunity to speak at a youth summit that was organized by Luis Cardona and the Street Outreach Network and the Department of Health and Human Services. And it was about 225 Latino students, mostly immigrants, many of which did not speak English as their primary language. And I spoke to them in Spanish, and I was able to connect and relate to them in a way that I could tell with conversations afterwards that meant something to them. And so that's critical. And I think it also just speaks our values as a community when our leadership reflects the diversity of that community in so many different ways. But it's not just ethnic and cultural, it's gender, it's age, it's geography. All those things matter, and they tell a story. So, and have I experienced some injustice? I actually have. In second grade, MCPS at the time was not built to know exactly what to do with students like me, who did not initially come into the system with English as their first language. And so I actually was going to be put in a special education curriculum, which I have nothing against that. And for so many of our students, it's a lifeline and critical. But it was a little lazy on behalf of the school system at the time, because they just didn't quite know what to do with me. And so they were going to stick me on this track. My mom had to advocate like crazy for me to get back in the classroom where I, turns out, definitely belonged. And I didn't know how hard my mom had to work and the sacrifices that she made and the pain that caused us as a family at the time. I just thought, well, I'm not with my friends anymore. What's going on? And then within a couple of months, it was all sorted out. And, that's a microcosm of what so many families face even today with the myriad of challenges before them. So, but I was blessed, Senator Kagan. I grew up in a solid middle-class family. My grandparents lived with us, so it was a multi-generational family. And that in of itself presented a lot of benefits.
Absolutely. So I don't know if we are going to have time to talk through everything else. So pandemic, obviously, I'd like to think that's in the rearview mirror. Say one initiative, one opinion, one action that you took that you think was important dealing with COVID.
So the one we did a lot of heavy lifting, as the General Assembly did too, throughout the entire thing. And I just can't thank you all again for your nimbleness and your leadership and your partnership with the county for so many reasons. And you again, in particular, Senator Kagan. But what was really, there was an initiative that Councilmember Navarro and I were able to push forward, which is going to have a long-lasting positive impact on our public health infrastructure. And it's called Por Nuestra Salud y Bienestar, which means for our health and wellness. So what happened was about 6 months into the pandemic, there was a 2-month window in which over 80% of the positive test cases of COVID were in the Latino community. The numbers just jumped off the screen. And it was clear that the efforts underway by the Department of Health and Human Services weren't really working. They weren't reaching the people that needed to be reached. And so Councilmember Navarro and I convened a meeting. This was in August. And we brought leaders from the Latino Health Initiative around a Zoom, and we said, what do you need? Tell us, what do you need? Because we knew, having done work in the community for so many years, that it's community-based organizations and community leaders that are often in the best position to spearhead change and to spearhead the kind of programs and services we need. And so that incredible group of leaders came back within 72 hours with the blueprint of a plan that we then sold to the county executive. And to his credit, he bought it right away. And then we actually prescribed how this should look, what this should look like operationally, which, you know, rubs some people the wrong way, but we just couldn't deal with, we had to push this forward as quickly as possible. So program was implemented, 56 health promoters were hired, nonprofit organizations were given more administrative capacity, a marketing budget led by a culturally appropriate PR firm took it from there. And a year and a half later, we have among the highest vaccination rates in our Black and Brown community across the country.
Yep.
This was then expanded to our African American Health Program and our Asian American Health Initiative. And it grew this infrastructure that is going to put us in a better position coming out of the pandemic than we were before it. So I'm deeply, deeply proud of that initiative. And I can honestly say it has saved countless number of lives.
Amazing. Okay. So good for you. You're chair of the Health and Human Services Commission, in addition to being president of council. And one of the many, many accomplishments, you've had a focus on animals. And since it's been Delegate Laura Charkoudian and me who has sponsored what we're going to be only the second state in the nation to ban declawing or deknuckling, since that is just brutal for our little kitties. Why don't you talk about something you've done for animals, for the pet lovers who are watching?
Absolutely. So, well, first of all, for a little bit of context, and I actually have to thank Delegate Charkoudian for this. So we were researching what kind of pet that we wanted to bring to our home. And Delegate Charkoudian suggested a hedgehog. And I thought, whoa. And so I started doing research on hedgehogs. They sounded really cool. And it turns out they come from Africa. You have to be in a temperature controlled environment. You have to get them from specific breeders. And I'm explaining all of this to my wife. And she says, why don't we just get a dog? And I said, yes. So thank you. And so I then began the process of researching breeds, and we knew we wanted to rescue, and how is this all going to work? And so we ended up with Coco, who is a year-old Australian Shepherd mix that we were able to adopt from a local animal shelter here in our community, not in Montgomery County, but that serves the region. And throughout that process, I grew up with the dog, and I know how important that dog was for me. I was an only child growing up, so the dog was like my brother in many ways.
Yes.
It's certainly a member of the family. But that process and the people that I spoke to throughout that process really inspired me to realize that we need to do more in our community here locally. And so I established legislation that creates an advisory board to our animal welfare department here in Montgomery County and takes advantage of the just hundreds, thousands of people who feel as strongly about their animals and pets as I do, and as you do as well, Senator Kagan. And so this commission will now advise our Department of Animal Welfare on various matters, on policy matters, and they will make recommendations to them on how to ensure that we best take care of our pets here locally, but that we also market the programs and services that we have in our community to our immigrant community, to our newly arriving community, and that there are steps that we need to take for the care and welfare of our pet in our communities, and that we can't take for granted. So that is an initiative I'm particularly excited about. This spring, I'm hoping to organize an event in partnership with our various organizations that help with adoption, to educate our community about the importance of adoption and see what pet might be right for your family. Because there's so, the last thing I'll say about this in particular, you can draw a straight line between our pets and mental health. And, you know, as we think about that, and I also think in connecting us as a community, another just very quick story. So I'm in Rehoboth Beach with the dog on the boardwalk. This was like about a month and a half ago. And all these people are coming up to pet the dog. And this woman in a Trump shirt comes up to pet the dog. And I'm thinking, oh crap.
Yeah.
We had the loveliest conversation because we totally stayed away from politics. We didn't go down that road. We just talked about the dog, and she talked about her dog. And so there's just something about pets that brings us together in a way that little else can. And we've got to take care of them.
I love that. Love that. So county executive, first, I'm going to ask you, have you endorsed a county executive candidate? And would you like to make news by endorsing someone today?
Well, thank you so much, Senator Kagan. So I'm going to not bury the lead, and I'll say I'm not going to make news today. So as council president, you know, and this is the other thing that I've learned since becoming council president, is just the interaction between the executive branch and the legislative branch really runs through the president in many ways.
Yes.
So I think it's in everyone's best interest that I not muddy those waters. And I have two colleagues that, of course, are running as well. But I will say this, I have a lot of respect for the position.
Yep.
Having worked for somebody whom I admire greatly and model strong governance, Ike in particular taught me how important this position is to be able to bring people together. It's one of the positions that helps break through the silos in the way few others can. And you know, you've got just an army of people, over 30,000 that work for you, and you've got just tremendously dedicated professionals who are all working to pursue the common good. So the job is important.
Give me 3 adjectives that you would like to see, that you would hope to see in our next county executive, whether that's our current county executive or one of the 3 other, you know, opponents.
So this is more than one word, but bridge builder.
3, yeah.
Yep. Bridge builder, economic vision, and I would also say the ability to bring our public, private, and nonprofit sectors together authentically.
Perfect. So one of my next questions actually will pivot to the role of nonprofits. I always say I fancy myself to be the senator for the nonprofit sector, and you also have a long and deep background to the nonprofit sector. Talk about its role, the nonprofit sector's role in government. And
so the nonprofit sector is an extension of government in so many different ways. Many of our residents who receive programs and services don't know who's delivering them.
True.
And that is a good thing because it, you know, the quality should remain strong regardless of who's delivering the service. And often nonprofits are in a better position to leverage resources and can provide funding sources that the county government cannot.
Yep.
So nonprofits are critical to this ecosystem of ensuring that we have the strongest possible safety net, but also taking advantage of opportunities. And we shouldn't forget, this is a business as any other is. And these are employees who pay taxes and live in Montgomery County and have professional development opportunities and are more often than not very highly educated. So these are exactly the kind of folks that we want in our community.
Amen. So we're going to get to the Fast 5 in just a moment. You are running for re-election. Why should people vote for you?
So people should vote for me because experience matters. In this next council, we're going to have at least 6 new members of the council. And we are not out of the woods from the pandemic. And so the leadership I bring from the executive and legislative branches and the just absolute sense of accomplishment and really what I've been able to accomplish these last 4 years, I want to extend to a second term.
Perfect. All right. So anything super fast that you want to mention before we do the Fast 5?
So I am introducing legislation tomorrow to create a sports commission in Montgomery County, because when you put it all together, it's the largest participatory activity that we have in our community. And so it's going to, I think, really open some doors and literally level the playing field.
I love that. Okay. So Council President Gabe Albornoz, 5 quick questions with 5 quick answers to let folks get to know you a little better. Number 1, you are bilingual, as we discussed. If you could magically learn any other language and just know it, what language would you choose?
French.
Okay. And why?
Well, I have some good friends from French-speaking countries in Africa, and
Mhm.
it's a part of the world that I have not yet had the opportunity to visit, and so I'd like to one day.
Perfect. Question 2, what is your favorite restaurant to go to with your family in Montgomery County?
That has to be Frankly Pizza in Kensington.
Don't know it. All right, I'll check it out. Number 3, if you had a TV show or a podcast and could have anyone you wanted as your first guest, not me, who would you choose?
President Obama.
Great choice. Question 4, tell us a lesson or something you've learned from your kids.
I've learned that patience is a virtue. And I've also learned that the power of optimism can overcome anything.
Fabulous. Love that. And the 5th question, Council President Albornoz, what is your hidden secret superpower? What is a skill or talent that you have, something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
I love to dance, but most people, a lot of people can dance, but I would also say that I truly and authentically try to be empathetic and listen and put myself in other people's shoes.
Beautiful. Well, Gabe, Council President, you are a remarkable leader, a great friend, and such an important leader and presence in Montgomery County. Thank you so much for taking the time to kibitz today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Senator.
Absolutely. Look forward to seeing you in person soon.